You know what was so cool too was that I got to witness the masculine energy of the Divine Masculine Roundtable. It was very logical. It was very, structured, the way they spoke. And then to see all four of us talking was very much more heart-based and emotion and softer and flowing.
All over the place.
Yeah, all over the place, but that was so beautiful. That's exactly like what it is, right? So it was just really cool to witness that. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am Nicole Frolick of Inflexible Me, and today I am excited to be joined by three fantastic women who I absolutely admire and love. We are going to be having a roundtable discussion on the Divine Feminine. If you haven't checked out the Divine Masculine Roundtable I did a few weeks ago with three gentlemen, I highly suggest you check it out. We're going to be talking about some of the similar topics that we covered in that discussion. But we're going to take it from the Divine Feminine perspective, as well as get a deeper understanding from the wonderful guests that I have here, what their journey has been. So please welcome Jessica Alstrom. She is known as an alchemist. She teaches and mentors all over the world as a quantum life coach, medical intuitive, spiritual translator, and quantum sound healer. Her teachings are used worldwide to help heal trauma and PTSD and to awaken unlimited human potential. She is the creator of Transcendence Wellness Centers and founder and CEO of Transcendence International Consciousness Academy, otherwise known as TICA, an international online intensive coaching academy. And with her extrasensory abilities, Jessica is able to view the quantum field, individual timelines, thought forms, emotional blocks, and belief systems. We also have Rebecca Barfoot joining us, who is a multidimensional energy intuitive, seer, and channel. She awakened to spontaneous light language channeling several years ago and works with a powerful and playful team of elemental, indigenous, angelic, and galactic guides. She is currently working on channeling material from the Isis Collective and a group called the Hathors to transcribe and decode the pre-Egyptian lost teachings of the feminine wisdom schools, which I think would be great to talk about. And then Lisa Watson is a co-host of the Enlighten Up podcast, light language channeler, healer, and old soul empath from the angelic realm. She is currently working under Jessica Alstrom to become a certified quantum life coach. And she also happens to be my best friend and the most loving person I know. Well, ladies, welcome to the discussion and the round table, even though it's square.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So ladies, we had three wonderful men here a few weeks ago giving us their perspective on the masculine and feminine. And so I'd like to start off the conversation by getting your perspective and understanding of what the masculine and feminine energies are to you and how you feel they're going to be coming into play more and more in this world. Jessica, we'll start with you.
Okay. I see everything quantum. So for me, everything is just stage of possibilities. And what we're noticing with this ascension is that everything has gone to one extreme or the other, especially on this planet. We're playing out all different types of paradigms and all different types of expressions from the masculine and feminine side. But where we are right now is we're coming kind of full circle. If you notice, like, if you look at the last 5 to 7 years, there has been this like rise of this divine goddess energy. There has been more women in politics, more CEO women, more women going off to work, more men staying home. And the way that I look at this from like a quantum perspective, like a scientific perspective, is that everything is about finding balance. And the ascension is really about going from one extreme to the other. So the divine feminine, in order to completely heal herself, she has to go all the way through this divine masculine aspect of taking her power back and stepping into her truth and speaking up and healing her body and healing her timeline and healing her bloodline and healing the idea of this kind of hierarchy and slavery against the divine feminine. And the divine feminine by nature is absolutely a higher dimensional frequency species, which means that the divine feminine in its aspect is naturally coming in the planet birthed at a 4th dimensional level, which means that she's the gateway. Now, obviously, this is the whole reason for repression. This gateway has been repressed. This whole entire earth game that we're playing is about repression. And as we have kind of stepped into the light, we've had to step into our divine masculine. I know as an entrepreneur and a businesswoman and a mother and a single mother at that, what I have had to experience to move into alignment of my divine goddess has actually been to experience my divine masculine, and to run a company, and to, you know, be the father of my children, not just the mother of my children. And to be able to play both sides of that spectrum has given me so much compassion for what men are going to be doing. Because if it's all about finding balance, we're now returning. I'm noticing this softening of myself as I've kind of had to move up this hierarchy in this man's world and take my power back. Now that I've gone full circle, I'm finding this really gentle, vulnerable place that the divine goddess can be at. And now I'm looking at what men are going to have to experience as the divine masculine begins to awaken. And they're going to have to go through the emotional journey. They're going to have to step back and feel. Instead of go out and conquer and create, they're going to be more limited in their creative abilities as an aspect of healing. So they're going to have to soften the edges. They're going to have to go within. They're going to have to work through those nurturing elements within themselves. And so they can return full circle. So it's almost like they held space for us, and now we're going to hold space for them.
And would you say then, because I experienced the exact same thing as you, you know, I was heavily through my masculine energy, and now through my journey of the divine feminine, I'm completely moving more into that softening the edges. In fact, that was one of the things one of my girlfriends said to me 10 years ago when I started this. She's like, you seem softer. But with men, then it would make sense that we see a lot of the masculinity right now going more into the emotional aspect, but then being able to return back to the masculine in strength and structure and all that, but still having that beautiful aspect of the emotional support within, just the way we're starting to soften and return to the divine feminine. Very cool. Lisa, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have to say, I am the exact opposite of the two of you.
Yeah.
I don't have a masculine bone in my body. So like,
that's not true.
I don't buy it.
No, I'm exaggerating. When I need it, I can pull it out. But I've spent most of my life being more of that submissive feminine role, you know, playing that that 50s wife character. I did that for nearly 30 years. So I'm really just at the forefront of coming out of that and really tapping into my divine masculine, you know, and trying to find balance there, and in my divine feminine as well, and, you know, not in this submissive, passive divine feminine role. I mean, I have all the traits and characteristics I need as far as the nurturer and the lover and all that goes as far as the divine feminine. But I guess it's just really that divine masculine. It's so important to have that balance. And for me, I don't even feel like a real woman unless I have that. I mean, you have to have that balance, and you have to be able to, like Jessica was saying, you know, I'm now becoming an entrepreneur and having to do these things for myself that I never had to do before. And you really have, if you don't have your divine masculine in order, you're never going to make it. So
true that. And Rebecca, how about you?
I really related to what Lisa said. So I've always played that more submissive, hidden, very silent role in my life. The masculine energies have been a lot more submerged, or maybe undiscovered until more recently. And I so often think of and what Jessica said about the continuum, and I always see a sphere as I was, you know, listening in to what my guides were saying in my own self about, you know, the divine feminine equation, and I couldn't parse it out from the masculine at all, because I see this dance of energy, and that's the eternal dance. And to me, it's always I think I simplify it by looking into water and looking into fire. And I've always had a lot of that yin sort of receptive listening energy. In fact, that's how I landed in this job. But the fire energy is always has been traditionally for me really, you know, kind of stuck So many clients, even men have this too, in my experience, and this is not across the board, but that stifling of energy of the true expression, which can also be the male perhaps not tapped into that feeling center, or that can manifest in a woman too. What am I silencing in myself? It's so much about natural voice, native voice, expressive voice. And to me, I love, I listened to the divine masculine conversation, and it's so true. It's what Ben said as well. It's about the heart. It's always about the heart. And the heart we often think of as being this sort of gooey, sticky, oh, I love you, I love you. And it can be that. It's very fling, it's very mysterious, it's very intuitive. But it also has massive amounts of massive fire of the heart, which is active, it is creative, it is like very powerful. And so look into the heart space for myself, to listen into what's needed. And another interesting thing happened as I was reflecting on this show about the masculine energy. I had my male body double sit in front of me, which I had not experienced before, just as I was listening in. And that turned into a really powerful practice for me. So maybe a male would see his female body double, looking into that. What does that being have to say, and what does it have to offer? So it's this eternal dance, and it's always shifting. It's always, at some points the fire is more active, and then we need that gestational, more reflective time to come back into the co-creative fire. We cannot live without that. And to me, also, what came up was the energy of dissolution and death being at its literal, the literal part of the equation, human death. We are very hush-hush and don't talk about that. But it can be about the shadow and the dissolving of something to create something new. It's part of the eternal equation, let's say. And I thought that was really beautiful. If we look at the sun and moon and the need for the night, what is our fear of night? And the shadowy realms of the intuitive, watery realms. So
yeah,
all very rich.
Well, I agree. And I feel that the surge of the divine feminine energies right now, really coming up, that goddess energy, is also to bring about the shadow, all of our shadow selves, the shadow of the world, the shadow of the individual, the shadow of the collective, up to the surface for us to get really comfortable with and get more knowledgeable with, so that we can do all of this healing. And so we're seeing a lot of that in our world right now. We're seeing the breakdowns, we're seeing things just falling apart. Whether it's within your life or maybe it's within certain constructs, it could just internally feeling like you're falling apart. I know a lot of people have been commenting to me about that. And also, I know when we, on the Divine Masculine, Justin said the same thing, that it's very hard to talk about the masculine and the feminine energies separately, because their power completely exists with them in union. So to understand them fully, we need to be talking about them together.
Absolutely.
Okay. You guys can decide who's going to go first, but what do you believe is assisting the feminine energies right now? Also, women on the earth, what do you feel is the big assistance that's coming through for the feminine energies and women in general?
Who wants to go?
I'll take a shot at that. Go first. I will. Yeah, at least I could speak about this experientially, as reconnection to the earth. And I think a lot of people, maybe we miss that deep down inside, and maybe we don't think of that as being a support system. But when I look at indigenous traditions around the world, what is the biggest support to these people, beings, cultures that have emerged? So we might say, from our perspective, more earth and sky. So I think the Gaia energies are wicked supportive. At least to me on my journey, that's phenomenal. But a little different perspective there on support mechanisms.
And what would you say is hindering the feminine then, right now? What do you think is kind of really hindering the feminine energies?
Light language coming through now.
Let it flow. Let it all flow. Oh, we take it all here.
I know. I said, can I get through it? Do you think I could do an hour or two without channeling something?
I don't think so, Rebecca.
That's all feminine energy, so let it flow.
I know. Oh, the biggest hindrance. Oh, being the lack of heart, the lack of connection to heart. The model has been for certain kinds of conceptual energy, intelligence energy for so long, the energy of the mind, but where's the energy of the heart? We would say this for both male and women, men, women, divine, and we would say that the hindrance of the heart, the blockages in the heart, you've been trained away from this energy. This is the energy of sun that wakes it up, everything up, the man and the woman, and the male and woman inside of you coming into union again. It's the heart. It's not to say that your hearts are shackled forever. It's just that the tension hasn't been placed on feeling or also on the true power of fire. Okay. And yeah, thanks. Thank you. I think it's heart connection.
Yeah, that's great. Jessica?
Oh, I have a different perspective. I think that everything is supportive. I truly think that the lack of heart and the abundance of the feminine energy finally coming into union and having each other's back has been one of the things that on this planet, if we look at our Aboriginal cultures and we look at our early cultures, that the women were together in union and they supported the earth and they worked with Gaia and they worked with the energy of the planet. And when they were separated and they were taught to be against one another, then that is when that divine feminine fell out of context with herself, because she didn't have anything to basically relate to outside of being what the divine masculine needed and wanted. But when I look at this quantumly and I see everything as a whole, I see that the very essence of the heart opening that I have experienced has come from the shadow pain. It has come from the lack of love that opens my heart. It comes from the desire that what I want this planet to look like for my children that makes me become more divine goddess. So to me, when I look at what is supporting us and what is against us, that remains in non-duality, because the heart center itself is the only heart chakra, is the only chakra system in the body that stays in non-duality. It does not have light and dark. It is just love. And so on that side, whether there's an absence of love, that creates desire. That's our first step of manifestation on this planet. That's what gets us moving. When national disasters happen and when we go to war and when we kill each other and when we fight each other, it opens our heart. And it sounds like it should have the opposite effect, and it does, because obviously we're having both sides of the experience. But for me, when I witness something and I know that I can be of service or that I can be a better person because of what's happening, that opens my heart. So the rise of the divine feminine is like the rise of the mother. It's like the mother is finally stepping in and going, we're breaking up the fights, we're putting the band-aids on the boo-boos, we're kissing all the wounds, and we're doing it because someone needs to do it. And then that divine masculine energy that's saying, oh, wait, we don't have to kill each other for power. We can actually tap into the power of love instead of the power of power, which is separation. And to me, it's kind of like when you look at the mother idea of a household, she's the glue. She holds the family together. So the divine feminine is the idea of the support. And in manifestation, she's the vision. She's the vision, she's the imagination, she's the womb. And the masculine is the action that takes that vision and puts it into life. So it's almost like a perfect orgasm, the masculine and the feminine, they make life. So we need, on this planet anyways, while we're still playing with duality, we need the contrast. We need the suffering to wake the heart up, because it is that separation that brings us together. And even though it may take as long as it takes, the contrast of everything is about, like what Rebecca said, is the fire. The fire is desire. And desire is what's going to bring us into a unified space. See, if everything was status quo, we wouldn't move. When we get uncomfortable, we make changes. So to me, what supports us and what holds us back is actually the same medicine that the planet needs.
That's an interesting perspective. And I guess, and everything is perspective, right? We can shift everything through how we view it all. Mm-hmm. And I would agree. I agree with you, and I agree with Rebecca, because it's the same thing, but just a different lens that we're looking at it through. And I know for myself that it was this deep suffering and pain that needed for me to, in order to open up my heart and allow the huge expansion and activation to occur. Lisa, what are your thoughts on what's assisting the feminine?
I mean, I think Jessica really said it all. She said so much in there, but to me, it's the fear that keeps us from moving forward, basically. And it's the love that opens us up, but we have to experience both. I mean, I know in my journey of tapping into my divine masculine and finding the better parts of my divine feminine have come from going into my shadows. And thanks to Jessica, I've been doing a lot of shadow hunting lately, and it's been quite interesting. But really, that's where all the good stuff is. It really is. It's going into the most painful parts. It's going into the parts that we fear and that we dread the most to find our truest and brightest light.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed too, just talking about that idea, is for me, when I finally sat with myself and I really looked at who I was with relationships with men, because, hello, married, divorced twice. And obviously I did not have that figured out. And I didn't realize that I had so much of that heartbreak energy around having a partnership on this planet. I really, because even as a spiritual teacher, started to kind of write it off. Like, it's just maybe not for me. Maybe I'm too strong. Maybe I'm too weak. Maybe I'm too broken, because I would really put myself out there and I would get my heart broken. And it was one of my last big heartbreaks that I actually began speaking light language. And it was through that kind of release about surrendering and having a son. So I have all girls. I have 4 kids, and I have all girls. And then I have this little boy. And this little boy, I will tell you, has helped me heal my issues with the divine masculine, because he has not needed anything from me, but yet totally needs me. It's not, there's no agenda there. There's no role I have to play. And by having this little child, I have seen the true essence and the power of divine masculine, where before I had that experience, I kind of held those old negative belief systems about the female and male relationships. And as I began to channel my own light language, I realized that I needed to heal my divine masculine inside of me if I was ever going to have a real relationship with a man. And so now I've taken that healing that I've done with myself and I've literally put it into my academy, because we are both masculine and feminine energies. And these children that are being born on the planet right now, completely androgynous, this whole transgeneration that has come through is telling us that we are both. And until we balance both aspects of ourselves, we can still choose to have a femininity look to ourselves. But until we embrace both, we really won't be able to have those healthy relationships on the planet, because everything is a reflection of who we are. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I had the same issues where I was definitely at odds with my feminine energy, because I always viewed it as weak, and I needed to be more masculine, because that's where I thought I would gain recognition and power and be in control of my life. And it wasn't until I started to really allow myself to go deeper into the feminine aspects that I had been neglecting and pushing and suppressing for so long, and having this distorted perspective of what it means to be feminine, that I know was imposed upon me through family, watching my parents, play out their relationship, society, media programming, all of that great stuff. And through me being able to heal my feminine energy, I was then able to go in and heal my masculine energy and realize where true power was lying, realizing the power of the masculine in the sense of really allowing my logical mind to have a voice as well, and not feeling like it had to all just be the feelings, like what do I feel like, and allowing both to have power. Now, interestingly enough, that also started to change my relationships. And so the more that I embraced both, the more I started attracting partners that were embracing both, and the frequencies were lining up. Rebecca, what have your relationships been like, since we're now on the relationship topic, which I think is great? I love the relationship.
Boy, they've been really all over too, over time. Just, I mean, as said, developing myself has led me into true love at last, let's say. And it's a whole new thing when you come into it with someone else who I guess we would say is awakened. And we know what we're working with, and we're willing to go into that deep, dark, nitty-gritty shadow material and do it on our own, but also bring that into the equation of the relationship. And that is so sacred in my view. It's kind of the ultimate, because everybody here knows relationships. Everybody watching knows relationships are like the hardest medicine, the hardest thing we can sign up for in this realm. So when we do that, it's like when we come as people who are working on that union equation, that flow within ourselves, that the water and the fire coming together, what happens when we join with somebody else who's also doing that? Where do we meet? It's quite magical. It's very dynamic and explosive, and very nourishing. So, yeah.
What were your views on, like, through your own masculine and feminine in your past relationships, where they may have been more distorted than where they are right now? What were they like? What was your perception of femininity and masculinity back then?
Let me think about that. Gosh, I spent a very long period of time quite single, and so I have to really go back into like other chapters of my life, and being single so that I could do this journey, really open up and awaken myself to the quantum field. But I'm sure, coming from a lot of confusion in my own family and suffering in my family, there's a lot of distorted what I thought I needed and what I found maybe were definitely not, helping me flourish or grow. I mean, they were certainly painful, Jessica, but we didn't come out of that shadow material learning much. So as we know, we kind of repeat the pattern until we get the lesson. Yeah, I mean, I have been with both men and women in long-term relationships, and really enjoy the energy of both. So kind of playing it's a dance, and we're always working. I mean, we come in a gendered body, of course we do, but there is that masculine, feminine inside, and finding both within either gender it's been beautiful to let both aspects of that, both genders, into my world and see where that has gone too. But really also craving that nurturing stability of male energy, and that nurturing, and that can come from either gender as well. I mean, of course, we may be wired this way or that, or whatever lessons we're learning from being in a relationship or opposite sex relationship. They both have, things to offer us about that journey of union with DMDF, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, what are your thoughts on relationship from the perspective of, when we look back throughout our timeline here on Earth in this lifetime, how you've seen relationships progress to where they are now versus where they were at? Like, just when you look at friends and family, your own personal relationships, what has the growth been like, in a sense of how have the feminine and masculine been evolving?
Well, there's my own personal experience, and then there's what I've seen happening. And, to be perfectly honest, I feel like I was so completely cut off from myself for so long. I truly feel like I just was born about 4 years ago, hence the stamp on my arm. And that I was just not even in touch with the idea of masculine or feminine. It was more just survival mode, and I did what I was supposed to do. I became a wife and I became a mother, and I really didn't think so much about who I was or what I wanted in this world. I really just played out a role. And I think that that's something that we went through maybe like in the 50s, you know, that type of Leave It to Beaver type relationship where the man just kind of had the say and the woman just kind of did her thing, and she really didn't have much of her own life outside of her family. And it's definitely taken a big turn since the 50s, you know, with just what I feel like women have sort of revolted against that. You know, they felt like they were imprisoned by that, and they decided that they were just going to go, you know, take the pendulum and swing it the other way. And now I think it's coming back a little bit. I feel like, you know, the women who have let, not just the women, but the parents who have let, you know, daycare centers raise their children just so that they could prove that, you know, they could bring home the bacon also, and that they didn't have to be stuck in this role. I never even contemplated that thought because I was so dedicated to my children and their well-being that to me it was just, you know, I would have I sacrificed myself in anything that I would have even contemplated wanting for myself for what I thought was best for my children. But I'm seeing now that it feels to me like women are coming back to center a little bit, that they're understanding that family actually does come first, and that they don't need to go to that quite of an extreme to make things, to be themselves, to express themselves, and to have both their own selves and raise their family well. So I see the pendulum coming back.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about feminism, and let's talk about modern feminism, not original feminism, which was based on you know, women actually fighting for equal rights and all of that, but feminism where it is right now, and the impacts that is having, where we see the feminine being asked to be more masculine and the masculine being asked to be more feminine, but not in the healthy way, perhaps more in the more wounded aspects of each energy, and how that's affecting society, relationships, the self in its own evolution. I mean, it's interesting because for me, I can see the destructiveness of it, but at the same time, I also see the gift in how it's helping us all understand where these energies lie, where balance and center really is, and, you know, needing to explore. I've talked about exploring the yin and yang, that the more out to the side of one we go, the more out to the other side we need to go. But it also helps us find that balance and how far out we can go, and then how far back in we can come. So, Jessica, what are your thoughts on the effects of feminism and how that's playing out for women and men right now?
I personally think feminism is a label, and I think it's a permission slip. So first and foremost, I don't see us. I see anytime we cluster together and call ourselves anything, it puts us into a box, just like religion. So, you know, when I see people gathering together and doing things because they're acting out as the feminist, then I'm saying, great, that's your permission slip that you need to have within yourself to be able to have the power to stand up and have your rights with your voice, your way. And like I said, everything is inherently neutral. So the idea of feminism is completely in a neutral state unless we're giving it meaning. And as soon as we give it meaning, then we decide whether it's, you know, progressive, if it's, you know, detrimental. We literally label it. And the more that we label anything, the more we build these boxes and walls. It's almost like, oh, to be spiritual, you have to be vegan. And, you know, in order to be, it's like these paradigms that I think that honestly, especially my community, more of the real quantum community is we're kind of moving towards labelless labelless identities, as far as it's not a feminist movement, it's not a masculine movement, it's a human movement. It's us embracing all aspects of ourselves. But I do see the purpose for those that are awakening into their power and having that permission slip and that feeling that they have the right, because they have that label, to really stand in and support that. And on the flip side of that is understanding from a masculine perspective, because there's a lot of masculine energy out there supporting the feminist. And you have to realize that if we're looking at shadow work and wounding, we're looking at kind of that victim and perpetrator sequence. So there's many men that are going through kind of repairing their perpetrator energy towards women right now. I wouldn't call it repenting, but I would call it that they're taking responsibility for their equality, their inability to support women, and they're backing up. And it's almost happening, I wouldn't call it karmic, but I would call it kind of like you said, balance one extreme to the other, where men are having to kind of pay it forward and pave the way and allow by being more submissive, and the feminine is being more progressive and taking that leadership. But again, when I think of the idea of labels, it just creates more boxes. So I think whatever anybody needs to call themselves, experience, walk through, create, is giving them power, then so be it. But at the end of the day, it's really about men and women being free to be who they came to be. And sometimes they have to go to the extremes to find that balance and neutral point. But we're both playing that sides for each other to kind of bring that full circle.
Well, what are your thoughts, though, on because I agree. I think, this idea of identity, needing to identify with so many things, it's just basically separation playing itself out in the form of needing an identity in that way, like a label of some sorts. But what are your thoughts on the way, because I believe that our femininity was weaponized against us through, some people call it the deep state, the cabal, the global elites, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. But, there are people who hold certain amounts of power that understand things. And for me, one of my kind of red pill moments was when I witnessed like the women's march, with the women wearing the pussy hats and all of that. And the first thing that came to my mind was that when I witnessed it, I felt this energy kind of awaken, like, oh no, like and when I say that, not that it doesn't have its purpose, but I could tell like that was a movement that many women were being kind of pulled into believing that this was strengthening their femininity. But in a way, I felt like it was weaponizing it against them, because there was a lot of anger being used in the march and things like this. And so women are being asked to tap into that anger. And not that anyone doesn't have a right to be angry. That's a very valid emotion and it needs to be expressed. But I feel like it's being used in an overture kind of way to kind of take women more into their masculinity, and then using this to suppress men into more of the feminine. But I feel like they're each is being taken more into that wounded aspect. What are your thoughts on that?
Here's the thing. Anytime there's protest, it is literally the exact element that they're fighting against. They are becoming the very essence of what they're upset about. So they are a vibrational match to that. But if we look at frequency, and we look at the frequency of anger, and anger is what I call sadness's bodyguard. Resentment is broken heart security, right? It's like when we look at frequency of emotion and we see an outpour of anger strike through, a gender on this planet, we have to allow them to come up the frequency chart. We have to allow them to move through emotions, because we've been, like you said, we've been suppressed. And through suppression, we've suffered huge amounts of deep ancestral guilt and shame and sadness and grief inside of our bodies. And if we understand that, just like a child, I watch my son go through every different emotional spectrum all day long, and he is perfectly perfect, then we should allow ourselves to do that too, and let that play itself out organically. Because like you can see now, that's not happening now. So things need to kind of play themselves out to reach a higher vibration organically, but they need to be allowed to turn that grief into anger and take their power back. And then from that power, then they find neutrality. And then the neutrality, they start to move up frequency. And then they go, oh, I'm good with it. I'm good with what's happening. But to organically let that happen, it's almost like on this planet, we've got to allow the tantrums to occur, because the tantrums that occur are going to be the breakthroughs of allowing that suppressed emotion. So it's almost like, yes, it can have a negative and a positive effect, but to me as a mother, like looking at someone go through every extreme of that chart, I know that they're going to come out the other side and they're not going to be holding that anger in their body anymore. So if my daughter needed to go out there, she's 24, and express herself that way, I would be right there on the sideline, even though politically what you protest you are, but we're in duality. So everything serves a purpose. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And maybe seeing someone else be angry on TV gave someone who was actually sad permission to go, I can be angry too. Mm-hmm. And I'm allowed to be angry, and I'm allowed to speak my truth, and I'm allowed to stand up and do this. Because again, anytime, especially as women, we stand together like we're doing today and speak our truth, it gives every other woman permission to do the same, because they see that we feel confident and strong about our belief systems or our ideas, and then they think, well, maybe I can be too. So regardless if you're, wearing a pussy hat and yelling, you're a role model for someone who needs that power level back. For someone else, you're a trigger. But if you understand that the trigger and the inspiration are both aspects of awakening, we need both. Mm-hmm. We need to get triggered and we need to get inspired. So whether I trigger someone or inspire them, I'm doing my job.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that's something that I think is becoming more and more brought to the forefront of people when they're understanding all of this, is that at first you're like, because I know I went through this, was like, at first it's like, oh, how could you? Like, you're getting it wrong. You're getting it wrong. And then I was like, no, it's all right, because it's all part of this divine orchestration of, like you said, triggers are definitely awaken. And, for me, that thing triggered me, but also awakened a lot within me of understanding what's really going on. And so I understand that aspect. Rebecca, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree that it feels like a necessary step in the progression. Like in so many ways, we're at this adolescent stage of development in aspects of our collective, and maybe that is something, everything needs a voice, as said. So yeah, like have that, don't stifle it. That hasn't been helpful to us for how many millennia, for anybody. So yeah, just move through that. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for everybody having their say and doing what is feels right to them to get to the next step. So yeah.
Sometimes you need the purge in order to.
Yeah, but I also so much agree with that, hey, listen, I don't want to be taught to be a man. That's not helpful. I don't want to be like this, am I being trained to model the wounded male energy so that I can take kind of wounded power back? That's a little like, oh, wow. But I agree with that. Like, where are we being trained like women in positions of power within a current system? Well, that's a whole nother topic, but not like watching how, as I come more and more into my own voice and my own truth, let's say my own expressions of union and more active energies, wanting to make sure there's a fidelity to the life force energy and what I'm expressing, and in my own, the heart space again, what am I bringing to my, the power of that anger or whatever it is, if it's rage. So many of us are carrying things across bloodlines. And so when someone is just outraged like that that just needs to come out, baby, come on. Let's just have it. But not as a thing to be continually reenacting. So let's move through that and see where the dance takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa?
You know, I've gone through such a journey recently, you know, personally, that when I look at what's going on with other people, whether it's wearing the pussy hats or being outraged or, you know, whatever it is, I feel such a sense of like calm across the board, because I have been allowed in my current situation, in my current relationship. My husband is incredible at just holding space for me, wherever I need to be and whatever mood it is or whatever's going on with me. And it's really, watching him do that for me has really taught me so much about doing that for other people. And I just can't judge anybody for anything anymore. I'm just like, if that's where you're at and if that's the way that you need to feel, I'm sending you love. And you know, I know that you're going to come out the other side. Like, I know that this is just a journey for everyone, and it's just an experience. You know, we all came to this earth just to experience, and we need to, I think, practice not judging what those experiences are. None of it is good or bad. It's just an experience, and everyone needs to experience the light, experience the dark, you know, the duality of it all. And so, you know, I have found lately that I'm just so neutral when I look at things and look at people and their experiences and what they're going through, and just embrace and love all of them. And I'm just like, I'm so happy that you're getting to experience that, you know, and that's where I am right now. I'm like sitting on a cloud.
Yeah,
I feel like I've been through hell and I've come out, and now I'm just tickled for anybody and anything that they're allowed to go through and they're allowed to express, because I've been suppressed and I've suppressed myself for the majority of my life, for more than half of my life. So I say go for it. If whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is that you need to express or feel or experience, I'm right there. Like Jessica said, like watching a child, I'm right there on the sidelines with you, holding space for you.
Well, I think that is in itself what Brian has done for you, just holding the space. You know, you learning from him was through him being the model, you know, modeling that energy of just being so accepting and allowing for you to experience whatever it is that you need to experience. And I think that's kind of where I see that awakening in a lot of people right now. I see this, it's starting to birth and poke its head above the surface, where people are starting to realize the power of being the model as the teacher, because I truly believe that's the best way we teach, is through being the model, and how observant we are as a society, and that's how we learn. And through the more of us that start to understand this and just be the model, it speaks higher volumes than any sort of protest or silence than I think we could ever give credit to. Not that none of those don't have their place in them, because they most absolutely do have their place. But I think we're finally coming to that understanding that we don't need to fix anyone else. We just need to find that balance within ourselves and project it out into the world, and it gets received. It lines up with those who are ready to be there, right there with you, and learn. And I think that's kind of what's starting to emerge more. At least that's what I'm starting to see. Where are you guys at with that?
Oh, I'm definitely witnessing that. I mean, I work with people all over the world, and the coolest thing for me as a life coach, you know, our academy is in 132 countries, and it doesn't matter who I talk to, what time zone, what part of the planet, we're all going through the same things. You know, it's really right now, it's about processing emotional trauma around relationships. You know, it's like we've kind of gone through the money stuff, and we've gone through this stuff, and right now, when I look at what relationships represent on the planet, it is the most inner reflection of self. Because if this is all law of attraction and law of reflection, then what we see in other people is what we are inside. And so what Lisa's finding her level of healing based on how little she judges, because the less you judge, the more you actually love yourself, because you're seeing that everyone needs to go through their journey to come out the other side. And when I look at relationships, I see that it's really about us learning as a collective to let go of attachment and move into connection, and to have connection with people where we don't lose ourselves. We don't lose our signal. We don't lose our voice. We don't lose our choices, our desires, by being entangled with other people. And I think that's what relationships teach us, especially the tough ones. Because I'm in a relationship for the first time in my life where I have no attachment, which is very, very different for a woman, because it feels almost, and I won't say less loving, it feels more loving, because it feels more authentic, yet I feel more like myself. You know, it's like, I think women have a tendency to get in relationships and immediately lose themselves. And like what Lisa gets to experience with Brian is he keeps a stable space for her to be her, not to be what he needs, not to be some sort of alternate aspect of herself, but to really be herself. And I think that light workers are so good at holding space. And I think that we're really good at that, but sometimes we have old paradigms of belief systems in relationships where we get lost. So I think really what's happening right now is, from my perspective, looking at thousands of people, we're all learning this really amazing self-love through very complicated relationships. And we need these complicated relationships because they are our best teachers. It's when you see yourself in someone else, that's a reflection. And if that triggers you, then that is your work. If they're just freaking out, that's a projection, and that you can stay neutral to. But if it actually triggers you, you say, oh, I've got some work here. That really, your tone of your voice just really threw me back into a place where I don't have my power. Let me go work on it. Thank you so much. But you see how I'm not entangled in, what did you mean by that? You know, why did you drop your tone? Why did you forget about me? How come you rejected me? How come you abandoned me? Instead, it's, ooh, I just felt abandoned. I'm going to go work on this within myself. So that's what I'm seeing collectively, which makes me so excited, because I think more than ever, with the heart opening, we want relationships, but we don't want them the way we've had them in the past. We don't want the toxic, the controlling, the loss of self, the judgment, the worry, the abandonment, the rejection. We want self-love in the relationship. And that is like, what I say is like, your ingredients don't get mixed up. Like, imagine being able to stay the cupcake and your partner is the icing, versus mixing all together and completely losing your identity, and then having to like go into suffering again and go into isolation and be single for 2 or 3 years just to get your balance back. Like, I think that paradigm is ending finally. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I would totally be the icing, not the cupcake.
Me too. I'll be the icing.
But just because I prefer icing over cake. But you know, I completely agree. I think as we start to evolve and find that union within ourselves and start to actually act it out, not just understand it, but literally live it out, then we start to bring that into our relationships. And I know for myself, relationships are such great barometers of where you currently are at with yourself. You know, they're really great barometers. And so in my most recent relationship, for the first time ever, I witnessed myself not wanting to change anything about the person. I was just so content with how he was, and you know, I could see the pain, I could see all the fears, and I could see all of that, but it wasn't what my focus was on. Is that, okay, that's cool, that's there, and I also could then see, oh, I know those are some of my fears too. So it wasn't so much of like wanting to fix him, but then I was like, oh, so let me just go in and see what's in there with me, you know, instead of really projecting it out. And it was just so refreshing for the first time to be in a relationship with someone where I wasn't projecting. And I think that's a really great place for anyone who's watching the video. When you're in relationship and you get to that place, it's a huge step. It's a huge step in your own evolution to be able to be in relationship, because they are the hardest teachers. They are the hardest teachers. So when you can do that, then that's a really strong indicator for yourself of where you're at. Rebecca,
I wouldn't use the word refreshing when I'm dealing with triggers, though. I just want to say,
after you do, you're like, that was refreshing after you come out the other side, right?
Yeah, but just to be clear, once you decide, okay, I'm not going to project this onto my relationship and I'm going to take full responsibility, and you're going to go find and do that shadow work, it's tough. It's a really tough trip, totally worth it. Absolutely worth it, and refreshing, and it makes you feel empowered because you're now in control, and you know that you're in control. And that's the part that I've loved. You know, Jessica, I'm working with Jessica, and she's taught me so much, and we've been working on, you know, really looking at the triggers in relationships and taking responsibility for them. And I feel like that's how you get your power back. I mean, if you want to be the essence of your divine masculine, your divine feminine, and find that union, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Well, and just to clarify, to me, you know, looking at that word responsibility, that doesn't mean taking all of someone's crap just because you're living void of judgment. What that means is the word responsibility is the ability to respond. So what comes up from what their behavior is that triggers inside of you is my job to respond to that. It's not my job to respond to his stuff. It's my job to respond to what comes from that stuff and work within. And like Lisa said, that's the ultimate power, because you don't need anybody else to be different. You don't need anybody to change. You actually know they love you even more because they're shining the light on something that was hidden and suppressed for maybe 30 years. And you're saying, thank you for exposing that inside of me. But like Lisa said, it's definitely not easy and not fun. And that's why, you know, I think that when you're going into the deeper shadow realms, to actually have a mentor or a support system, because you have an inner child that needs to feel parented on this process. And when you're going in the deeper places, which I'm hoping that we as a collective would really go deep. I mean, that's alchemy. There's diamonds in that dirt, right? So if we can go all the way inside of that, we know that there's the magic inside of that, which is it's grace. It's like this absolute sense of peace with exactly what is, which means nothing needs to change and everything is divine. And you see someone else going through a shadow storm, and you know that that's the best thing that could happen for them, because on the other side of that is awareness. So it does get amazing. But like Lisa said, when you're going through hell, you just got to keep going.
Don't stop.
Just run like hell, right?
You know, the other thing I actually realized today too is, because I've been doing this work for a couple months now, is that when you start kind of clearing those layers and removing those shadows, and you get to the true essence of yourself, that it becomes easier to recognize your own true feelings. So, you know, as far as taking responsibility, if there's, you know, something within your relationship, you know, yes, you're taking ownership, but it also becomes easier for you to find your voice and say, but I have to honor who I am and how I feel, you know, without judgment.
Yeah,
So.
Absolutely. I know that for me, it was learning to be okay with being angry and knowing that I'm completely sufficient in my anger, and knowing that it's not a bad emotion, it's just an emotion, and being accepting of it. And I think once we become more accepting of things, it allows it to move through us. It gives it the permission to start moving and releasing and letting it go. But as long as we keep kind of pushing against it, saying, oh, I can't feel that, or I can't feel this, well, then that's creating the very thing that's causing you to not run through it. You're stopping and you're putting your feet in some quicksand, and it's going to be a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I've learned everything I've needed to learn about this journey by watching children, and they don't apologize for their emotions, but they don't live there. Mm-hmm. They move through emotions very quickly and very precisely, where they feel completely the essence of that anger in that moment, and then back to joy. They feel completely enraged and then back to love. And if we were allowed to do that, you know, we would be a very stabilized, not misemotional community of people, but we have been taught to suppress the emotion, and emotion is energy in motion, so it has no place to go. We're walking volcanoes, mm-hmm. You know, we're walking storms. And if we look at what's going on weather-wise right now, it's like the earth is purging her emotional body as we are purging our emotions. And it needs to be safe for us, like, you know, to be mad, to be sad, I've been doing this thing with my 6-year-old where as a mom, it's like anytime your child is in pain, it's like you have this instinct to like want to take the pain away and stop the process of what they're experiencing. But I've actually decided that I will go deeper into it with him so that he can play it all the way out quicker, and he can return to joy faster. So actually supporting his anger and supporting his rage and supporting his grief by holding space a little bit differently, I've seen him move through these emotions so much quicker. And then I turn around and I teach my classes, because he's like that barometer, like you were talking about, where he doesn't have any belief systems yet about who he should be and what's wrong or right. Like he doesn't know it's wrong to be angry. So his anger is so expressive, but it's very, very short.
And pure. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's talk about this. This is our last thing before we end this, if that's okay. Do you guys have enough time to talk one more topic?
For sure.
Okay. Since we're kind of talking about the feminine energies here, and this is a Divine Feminine Roundtable, it's been brought up in this conversation a couple times, so I think I'd like to address it because I believe it's extremely powerful in our healing, and a lot of the healing happens through the feminine energies. The inner child. I know the inner child is extremely potent when we connect with it and heal through this avenue. I've had extremely successful bouts of healing through interacting with my inner child. Rebecca, let's start with you. Can you just talk to the audience a little bit about the inner child and how connecting with it has assisted you in your healing journey?
Definitely. It's one of my specialties in my client sessions, as it turns out. So, you know, in my own healing journey, which is of course ongoing, you know, I have made lots of relationships with the different aspects of my 17-year-old. And when you let them in, they come with these pearls. They come with the pearls of their pain, and they will take us right into where we need to be, and they will end up being our most powerful guides. So when I work with a client, one of the first things I often see etherically is like a group of children around them, and they all have things to say. Their voice will come through, and I can let the client know about that, what dynamic is. And it's a fast way, if you're doing tough work, to be still with yourself and ask those small ones to come forward. And in my experience, it's turned into, like, my 4-year-old is on my right hand side all the time. If I don't know, if I'm like going through my day and I'm in executive mind, and I don't really know by the end of the day because I haven't been checking in how I feel, I'll just look at her and she'll, you know, she shows me point blank, she'll say a word, or she'll show me, I can see by her visage what's happening for her. And it's so potent. It's such potent medicine, powerful practice. So that's what I have to say. Because as we speak about relationships, you know, when I'm triggered in a relationship, there's a wound there. Where does that wound, for me, it's often coming from the deep past, the watery realms of somebody didn't pay attention to me, or the abandonment traumas and the physical sexual abuse and so many things. I can look to that material and welcome that in. What is the darkness that it has for me? What does that mean? Let's not run from that. So So that is my biggest teacher. And I think you touched on that, Jessica, at the beginning, of course, in that non-dual way, we embrace all of that. This container of our experience is so big, it can embrace all those children wanting to come home and come out of the shadows back, and they dissolve back into the heart space. So I have a lot to say about that.
We need more time. We need more time to talk about the inner child, because to me, the inner child is the entire magic of this journey. Because the egoic part of us remains in this dense space, and it has a hard time moving. And higher self resides in this space of love and passion and excitement, and it will not move into the lower frequencies. But the inner child, it can be kind of like, the child that brings the two parents together and says, it's time for us to make up, and it's time for us to heal, and shows us the wounding, and it shows us the magic, and it shows us that it's okay to pretend and use our imagination. The inner child is literally the fairy tale. If you read a fairy tale, it always starts with this premise where some version of this fairy tale has to go through a dark forest, has to go through a dark experience to get to the fairy castle and the prince and all of these things. And when you look at that metaphor of this spiritual journey, all of our greatest guidance, especially moving into this new paradigm, is not coming from the ETs or the angelic realm. It is coming from the inner child. Obviously, it's a collective speaking, but like Rebecca said, every aspect of you that has been traumatized remains exactly at that age. So you may have the 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a newborn aspect of you. And notice how when you get triggered, if you say to yourself, how old do I feel right now? You'll feel the essence of that particular child speak through you. It's not fair. It's like, I'm 8, I'm 12, I'm 6. And what I teach is to kind of go back to that child. I spend, I would say, 90% of my time with my inner child, because she knows everything about me. She knows all the woundings, but she also knows all of the magic that is inside of me. So it's really about embracing her and him through both aspects, because like I look at my son, and I love this about him. We'll go to any park, any place in the world, and he will walk up to anyone and be like, do you want to be my best friend? And then they go play. And they don't even ask each other's names. They play for 25 minutes. They say goodbye. I leave. I say, what was his name? I don't know. He's my best friend. And I equate it to like the drunk girl in the bathroom, where it's like, you're my best friend. I love you. You're amazing. Like my son is literally like the drunk girl in the bathroom. He will make friends everywhere. He loves giving people compliments. And I'm like, that's where the magic is. The laughter, the joy, the straight connection without needing to be a color or an age or anything. And it's like, if we would all start to work more, like Rebecca said, with the inner child, this whole process would be so much more fun. It would be so much easier. Like whenever I'm working, I always tend to my inner child first. My inner child, and this may sound bad, comes before my children, because she's the one that's been neglected for 40 years while I've been raising 4 kids, making their needs come before mine. So when I kind of turned the tips and started tending to my inner child before my own children, my self-love increased, and I actually became a better mom because I didn't have resentment. And a lot of moms won't speak about this, but they actually have jealousy toward their own children because they're having things we never had. They're getting to feel their feelings. They're getting to express themselves. They're allowed to say no. You know what I mean? And we're sitting there going, oh, this inner child is like, that's so not fair. They get to say no. They're not even grateful for it, So I do a lot of work with my inner child, especially because I'm constantly parenting, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And it's so interesting you bring that up, because I remember being 16 and I had an opportunity to go to Switzerland on an exchange program for 3 months. And I was so excited. I actually got chosen to go. I was the only one in my school who won the lottery. It was a total lottery on who got to go. And I was super excited. My dad was really supportive of it. But my mom, I picked up all this energy from my mom that was like, I don't want you to go. I haven't been to Europe yet. And it was this resentment that her 16-year-old daughter got to go to Europe before she did. And I totally picked up on that. And so it's really interesting. I completely agree. I believe you need to tend to yourself, most importantly, the inner child, because those needs are very important before you tend to anyone else, because your potency and potential of what you actually get to give from that point is so much better than what you can give from not feeding that aspect of yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's what's making this journey fun, is getting in touch with that child, because, you know, that's where laughter, unconditional laughter, and just release of laughter, belly laughs, is actually one of the highest body frequencies that we can have on this planet as a human. You know, it's not love, it's laughter. It's that, and children and animals give that to us immediately. You know, it's like just watching them be free to be themselves immediately elevates our vibration. So if you could imagine that just allowing your inner child to do those things would naturally elevate your vibration and begin to heal those wounds within you, you wouldn't necessarily have to go search for them all the time. You know, we can be proactive on this journey. We don't have to always be shadow hunters. We can just tend to the child in this moment and not neglect her while we're taking care of everyone else, especially practitioners. Yeah. You know, those of us who are healing others, we cannot forget ourselves. Otherwise, we fall into that comparison. We fall into that place where the inner child begins to suffer because we're being of service.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I completely agree on the laughter thing. It's my favorite frequency. And I know that
screaming.
Yeah.
Like when you like actually pee a little bit, that's the best.
Yeah.
That is the best.
But it's so true, because I will actually, when I'm feeling low and I'm feeling like I need like a frequency boost, one of the first things I go for is a video of my niece. Or I'm like, I'll message my sister, do you have like a video of Nora that you can just send me or something? And it completely shifts everything. And the frequency, it's just unlike anything else.
That kitten videos.
Yeah. Lisa, what about you for the inner child? I know you've had a great journey with your inner child.
Well, I am being coached by Jessica Alstrom. So I'm going to show you all something kind of cute here. Mm-hmm. This is sitting next to me.
Aww.
I bought this bunny about a month ago, and it's my inner child's little toy. And I have to tell you everything that, you know, Jessica said, and I'm working through it, and I'm walking that talk right now. And I can't even tell you how amazing it is, and what it's done for me, and how quickly I feel like I'm moving through stuff because I'm paying attention to my inner child. And that's where all the magic is. She's the one that I abandoned for, you know, 45 years of my life, basically. And Rebecca has also helped me with my inner child. And I actually went to her first when I had this inkling that been doing a lot of self-work, and I realized that I know that everything that's keeping me from everything that I want to be in my inner child. And I started with Rebecca, and then I got hooked up with Jessica, and that's what I've been focusing on. My inner child comes first, and she's actually been first and foremost for about a month now. The past month, all I do is sit around and hold my bunny and like color.
But that's therapy for her.
Yeah,
seriously, that's been allowed to do that. You know, like it's the simple. It's children. That's the thing is this journey is actually so darn simple. Mm-hmm. It's the simplest things, like being listened to, being seen and heard. You know, being held, having a toy. You know, and being able to keep it, having space to just not have to be a grown-up sometimes, or have to be responsible all the time. And because again, it's like when you look at what your inner child, especially as an empath, which all of us sitting here are, we were growing up so quickly because we were feeling everyone's feelings around us, and we were monitoring how safe we were around everyone else's fear. So we all of us gave away huge parts of our childhood to basically create safety and security for those that we love that were less conscious than us. You know, I know for me, I had to be the comic relief of my house if I didn't want my house to explode. Like, I would go in and soothe my mom, I would soothe my dad, which basically what that meant is no one was soothing me. So I had to go through my selfish phase, or what I like to call self-focus phase. And I had to focus on allowing the childhood that I never had to fully be experienced again. And I was so kind of traumatized in my childhood and abused that I've had to literally watch my son to even know how to be a child. You know, it's like I grew up so fast in my mind that when I watch him do things, literally I'm like that dog that cocks their head a little bit, like, what's he doing? Like, he's just spinning around the room like aimlessly, and he's getting so much joy. Like, he's getting more joy from blowing bubbles than I have from buying a new house. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to feel that again. And so even if I spent half of my life discovering that, this whole entire incarnation would be divine perfection. Mm-hmm. We have to give ourselves time to have that journey.
I agree. I know for myself, when I started to go into meditation and interact with my inner child, I'd invite her in, and we'd always meet up in the forest because that's my favorite place. And there were times where we would just like grab hands and spin around in circles, you know, like when you cross your hands over and we just spin and spin, and the leaves go flying up, and we were just giggling and laughing. And then there were times where we'd have conversations in my meditation, and really it's just allowing it to flow. I was stunned at some of the things she said to me. I absolutely instantly brought to tears of the pain that was coming through that I had no idea was still there. And so I always, when I'm working with clients as well, it's one of the first things that, I bring clients into is working with the inner child and discovering that. And I think that that's one of the greatest ways for men and women to really tap into that feminine energy of the healing aspect, is to work with your inner child and revisit, whatever age you resonate with in that moment, and I always say, because I'm a pretty visual person, I like to see myself with the haircut I had. I remember some of the clothes I had, what I was wearing. And, it's so interesting to just let the conversation go, and you'd be so surprised. The clues that your inner child gives you will bypass so many things that you think you know as an adult. Like, it's absolutely mind-blowing sometimes how quickly you can speed up your healing process just by interacting with your inner child.
Yeah, the thing I've realized through working with Jessica is, between the triggers and the inner child, just if you get those two things down, like you pay attention to the triggers, especially in your relationships, and then you go find that inner child and you heal her. And Jessica does a whole time travel thing as well, but it's just miraculous that you don't need anybody but yourself. And it's just, I've really come to now understand what it means to heal thyself, and that it's simpler than I ever thought it could be. Hard work, but simple.
Right. But it becomes like breathing, being able to kind of go, oh, this is happening in this moment. This isn't, because all moments are neutral. So if anything is triggered, it's always coming from the past. And I've even had inner child experiences from past lives, and have taken people into parallel realities and future realities, again, to kind of really connect with, because again, the child 0 to 7 years old remains in the theta brain, which is imagination. It's Akashic records. So when you're with your inner child, you too are in your records. You are completely in that space of non-physical reality, and you are free to literally go and be and have and experience, which means if we are really creating our reality, we can go back to her, we can go back to him, and we can change that reality through the inner child. And that will change it in our own biochemistry. And as we understand now with epigenetics, when we believe something about ourselves, our body behaves and acts and cellular entrains itself to mimic our belief system. So if we actually go back and we work with this inner child and we shift that frequency within us, then this physical body begins to show up completely different, act different, heal different, behave different. And like Lisa said, you know, feel more neutral. That's how you know, that's your barometer, is your neutrality points. And when your inner child is happy, you really have your eyes on your own paper. You don't care what anyone else is doing. You don't care what anyone else has. You are so excited about who you are that it's almost like creating a reality becomes fun again. We just have to take responsibility for the reality that was created for us by going in and working with the inner child, so she can literally change the story. Because you know what? Children know how to do a few things really early on. They can dance, they can sing, they can laugh, and they feed themselves, but they know without any training how to pretend. And pretending is the access and the gateway of our pineal gland, our neocortex, our imagination, our Akashic records, our past, present, and future. And children at a very young age are practicing creating their reality by building a fort, by playing, you know, good guys and bad guys. They're practicing building reality and turning energetic particles into form. And then we're taught, don't do that. Don't feel that. Don't think that. Don't say that. And then we have to move into this solid reality where our lives don't work. So when lives don't work, we return to the inner child.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's so true. This idea of pretend, it's so powerful. The potency that lays there for us in our co-creative abilities is infinite.
Yeah. We definitely have the power with that if people more and more are getting in touch with that aspect, that guidance to unpin this matrix reality and jump a timeline. You know, it's the creative, like the kids, as we're talking about divine feminine, divine masculine, like they hold the keys to that union. You just look into them, they know exactly where to take it. They weren't thinking about, you know, that equation when they were just out doing whatever. And they bring wisdom, you know, they bring our joy, but they bring that wisdom. They are that union of the wisdom and the heart combined. I feel love and wisdom is the eternal equation for me. And really, what a great part of this conversation. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of love and wisdom, to sign off this conversation, I'll let you start, Rebecca, since you just finished. What would you like to leave the men and women watching this video? What message would you like to leave with them regarding the feminine and masculine energies?
Ooh, that's rich. Oh, geez. And well, since we're on it, you know, running around and playing is awesome. Like, give yourself a permission slip to do everything you've always wanted to do but haven't done, and just say, well, I need to learn it. It's like learning a new language. Can you learn the codes by dropping everything you've been trained to do? We can't, but not eternally. But give yourself a hall pass to explore something new that you've always wanted to do. It's been lying over here untapped, doesn't come in. Open that portal. That'll teach you things. It is about the self journey. It's the self journey. When I'm holding enough space for myself, I can make space for everything that needs to come to me and everything that anyone else is presenting to me.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Lisa?
Your superpowers are held, I just have to say, within, you know, Jessica was talking about it, but within your imagination and your ability to pretend. And that, I guess the most important thing to know is that nothing is outside of you, that it's all within you, and it's all within your power to have and be and do and feel however, what is ever, you know, most joyful to you. And just stop looking outside yourself. Go inside.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. Jess?
I would say follow your highest excitement. And it doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to be logical. It doesn't need to support the obligations that you have. It is not about what's exciting to anybody else, but see, if you follow the highest excitement, you're following your inner child. And she and he, if we're going to talk about this whole conversation, healing the divine masculine energies, it's through the inner child. And through our highest excitement is the vibration of ecstasy in a playful form. And it's not an egoic urge like I need to eat that chocolate cake. That's the exciting thing. I'm talking about something that gets you so excited that you can't sleep at night, that you lose time and space over. And sometimes within us, it's not socially acceptable to do that. That would require quitting a job or leaving a relationship. I would say absolutely take the risk and follow your highest excitement. And it will take you through whatever storms you need to take through the lion's den, the tar pits. It will take you right into the rainbow and the gold that you're seeking, because everything we want is on the other side of fear. But sometimes the highest excitement will take us into scary places. But we have so much more courage when we're excited about something. It's like if we were going to say that the engine of manifestation is desire, then what's the fuel? What's going to drive the car? It's excitement. You know, if you don't have motivation and you're not excited about something, you're not doing it. So it was like when I started working with Lisa, she was so effing excited to like get back to herself, that her excitement is what gets her to show up every week for me. It isn't that, you know, she's paid money or that she's got an obligation. It's that she's so excited about discovering herself that keeps her accountable to her own dreams. So it's like, if we follow our excitement, it will lead us into toughening us up, courageous moments, but it will always lead us back to our heart.
Absolutely. And I'm going to piggyback on that and say that on this idea of ecstasy, that when we think about the union of the masculine and feminine energies and this dance of the masculine and feminine and being able to synergize in perfection in the way that they do, ecstasy is the song they dance to. Ecstasy is the song that the masculine and feminine dance to in harmonization. And so when you can move into that space of ecstasy, and feel that frequency and that energy, you are doing the dance. It's a beautiful place to be. So thank you so much, all three of you, for being here and sharing your wisdom, your insights, your experiences with everyone here. I appreciate all three of you very much. And I'm going to leave all of your information in the show notes below. So for everyone who's watching, if you'd like to reach out or find out more information about Jessica, Lisa, or Rebecca, all that information is in the description below. Thank you so much for showing up today. And I hope this information was helpful to you. We'll be back with you again next time. Bye, everyone.